Hey there, friends. My name is Sarah Mastriani-Levi. I'm so glad that you decided to join us. We are pre-recording this show for Thursday night. Today is Tuesday. We are in the middle of election day, and both William and I had obligations on Thursday night. And so keep in mind that anything and everything that we discuss is pre-results, not that politics were ever the topic, but anything that we have to say will not be related to any results or any understandings of what's happened on this specific day. But we decided that it would be really important, both personally and on a larger scope, to talk about healing through vulnerability, the challenge of being vulnerable. And as we just kind of threw a couple of topics around a few minutes ago, I said to him, I'm really struggling to know how to open this show, which I think is really indicative of this heart-centered feeling of like, I want to be open, I want to be vulnerable, and I'm not quite sure how to begin to dive into this. So I'd like to invite my co-host, William Brown, to join me, and we'll dive into what vulnerability is about and maybe come to some understandings together. Hey, William, how are you?
How are you?
I'm glad to be with you. I'm glad that we have this time a little bit earlier than we usually talk.
Yeah.
Being able to dive in. Before we meet, as I often do, I drew a few cards. And the ones that came up, this one, on spaciousness. What do I no longer need? Help me, God. 2, I'm trying to read it backwards. Release whatever people, places, or things drain my vital essence. Show me what will fill me with enthusiasm and joy. And the other one was, it is not my role to make others happy. And as we dove into this, there's a place for vulnerability to show up in that spaciousness that we create by releasing other things.
Right.
And the vulnerability that shows up when we're like, what do I fill this space with? More of the same? Or how am I learning anew to be me in this body, in this space, in this growth? What comes up for you?
I think there's, so many times when I get questions like that, it's, I say it's a rabbit hole or it's a rat hole. And I never know, once I go down it, who's living down there, right? And what's down there. And to try to feel that I am giving it enough thought or consideration, but I am not overthinking to the point that now it becomes like no use to me, no value of the endeavor. And it is, I think it's a noble inquiry to see, the spaces, that are available to us, that we're in, that we're taking up, that we're giving away, and that's, for me, there's a level of vulnerability there because I don't know if it's my man suit, or my male label that feels like, to dominate this space, I have to own it. I have to, I have to go into power. And there's just some places that I'm in that it's not that I enter sheepishly or anything like that, but there is not this desire to, and overwhelm, dominate, all those things that sometimes we do. And so, like I said, it's I don't know why it feels like that you know, when I don't show up that way, in that masculine way, I am being less than what I'm called to be. Hopefully that makes sense. I don't know why that came out, but that's what
Mm-hmm.
was coming up when you were reading it.
Do you feel that you can show up in your divine masculine and be very quiet and be very silent in that space?
You know, I would like to believe that that's to be the truth, but it's like that's the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
Is that my masculine strength, or is that me denying my masculine strength? You know?
Compensating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and I think mainly because, you know, I grew up with not a lot of examples, good examples of
Yeah.
what masculine strength is and how it shows, you know, how it can show up quiet and reserved.
Yeah. I think that I think that the media's tendency to love things that are over dramatic,
Hmm.
sensationalize things, gives a very jaded impression of what power, masculine power, looks and feels like,
Right.
how it shows up in a space. And I'm just kind of scanning my mind for kind of not even people specifically, but just moments when I realized that the divine masculine could show up
Mm.
and in silence command the space.
Right. There's a thing that hopefully I'm not like interrupting the signal, but I just felt the need to say something right then. But there's a thing that I say that, you know, there's some moments where I say, you know, I'm a grown ass man. You can't tell me, you know, what to do. And I recognize that when I say that, the man isn't speaking. You know.
That's the rebellious teenager, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, even in that, you know, rebellion, or in that kind of trying to dominate the situation, that's not the masculine. That's not the male.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the man
Mm-hmm.
showing the divine strength showing up in that moment. And it was kind of funny, but not funny at the same time, because,
Mm-hmm.
you know, realizing that how many times I had to like remind myself and others that I'm a grown ass man. You can't tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, dude, you're just letting people know that you're not. You're just
Mm.
not.
Yeah, it's. I can think of a dozen times that I've seen, not with you specifically, but with popularized that kind of behavior. And when I think about someone who just commands
Mm.
power, and then, you know, as we're going into our topic of vulnerability, I don't know how many people, I mean, as a coach, I get to, you know, my strong suit is asking people questions to help them know their truth. Then that, you know, that's not a coach superpower, but that's my personal kind of thing that I'm able to tap into. One of the things that I have been witness to is someone sitting in the silence of a question
Mm.
and leaning into the vulnerability, and how powerful it is when you see something come over them that they realize their impact, their power. And equally as powerful is that moment. I'm not sure how to call it, and I'm just going to make up a term right now. It's like a cracking moment.
Mm.
Um, Not only when they open up to the joy, but also when they open up to that cracking, vulnerable, sometimes crying moment of like, I missed so much by trying to stand in this image. And that vulnerability, just when it's not defeated, but it's just like this release of an image.
Right.
You and I had discussed before that even though we're deep in our own personal development work on different, very different paths, that we still have a tendency to really struggle with how people see us.
Right.
Interactions, overall, we get very affirming interactions that what we're doing and the impact we're creating is positive and meaningful. But from time to time, sometimes from people close to us, and sometimes from people who really don't know us well at all,
Right.
we get interactions that cause us to question worthiness.
Right.
Are we on the right path? You know,
Mm-hmm.
as I say that, I can definitely think of personal and distant people who have been either projecting or reflecting something that I
Right.
didn't want to see in myself. And I'm
Right.
willing to sit with both. What
Right.
comes up?
I think it's really interesting that recently the projecting and reflecting has been a point of emphasis in my development. And
Mm-hmm.
as so I know the difference, that it is important for me at this time to really know the difference. Because if I don't know the difference, I will basically send myself through, um, a lot of crazy thoughts and endeavors when it was just a projection versus reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other challenge with that is that I have seen in my life is that sometimes there are people that what I would say that I barely know, that will give me a reflection of myself. And there's some people that, I felt like I know and know me, that will project on me. Yeah, and it's like, why isn't it reverse? Why isn't it, you think you feel like it should be reverse, that there's
Mm-hmm.
no way that this person who barely knows me has seen me. And I think it has nothing to do with, um, I guess time is the right word, is that, how much in you're within the relationship, or your awareness of someone. Because there have been some times where I have connected with someone, love at first sight, but there was a seeing of, hey, this person is not just someone that I'm glad I know, or someone that I have respect for, or appreciate, that I'm just like honored to you know to have come in contact with this person without not knowing all of the other stories, right? Type of thing. And and many times, most of the times, it was a correct assessment. It wasn't just wishful
Mm-hmm.
thinking that, oh, you've said all lovely words, and now now you're just a lovely person, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was something way more than that. But it's and I don't know if it's just the time that we're in, that we need to, like I said, it's a personal thing for me, that we really need to know the difference, because they, reflecting and projecting, you know they can have influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be the course of, if you do something or not, if what you think of yourself, or don't think of yourself. And it's, um, so yeah, it's very interesting how that's coming up, and admitting, having, for me to admit that I I really don't know. I really can't. Um, I don't know if what somebody just said is a reflection of how I'm showing up or not showing
Mm-hmm.
up, or if it's. I mean, I think there's sometimes there's ego that shows up and goes, "Dude, that ain't you," you know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
just kind of just dismiss it, and it's like, well, wait a second, let's at least take a look, right?
Mm-hmm.
and just go from there. And I think that's what vulnerability is asking, is that
Mm-hmm.
that second look.
Mm-hmm.
Not just allow people to say what they're going to say, but am I willing to take another look at this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you 100% that the ego's job is to protect and to perpetuate. And the deep work, the shadow work, is taking that second look. I will say that in my experience, that the building or the breakdown of almost every single relationship that I have encountered has to do with, on one level or another, the amount that each person feels seen.
Hmm. Wow.
For them to be able to feel that they matter. You look at like marriages that fall apart, and we think that we see our partners better than anyone else. But when a marriage falls apart, it's not just that we see the strengths and the weaknesses, but we stop seeing them as a human.
Hmm.
I don't even know. I don't want to speak in general terms. Not everyone, that is not the reason that every marriage falls apart.
Right.
But when needs are no longer being met and you stop seeing
Right.
what is the true essence of the person, when you have outgrown that person as your teacher and partner,
Mm-hmm.
you can either choose to repeat the same lesson or choose to see. And one of the most difficult steps is to go from not being seen by
Right.
another person to fully owning and being willing to see yourself.
Right. Yeah. I think for me, the word that's coming out right now, the betrayal, is the expectation of the label of the person who is seeing or not seeing you, right? And so I don't know why I said it that way instead of just saying,
Say
is
more
that
about that.
the biggest challenge that I have with people who I believe don't see me. It's it's for me. It's connected to, um, if I label them the friend or family or wife or something. If it's just someone that I haven't ascribed a label to,
Mm-hmm.
there's a part of me that I care and I don't care if you see me or not. You
Mm.
know?
Like, does that
Um,
person have significance in your life? Is that what you're saying?
right. Yeah. It's like, if there's not a level of significance or value that I have placed on them,
Mm-hmm.
or that there is a perceived, um, if they see me or don't. I mean, we're a part of, a community. Many communities, but one of the communities is, the Good Life Project community. And on, baseline for me, um, our community is, heart centered,
Mm-hmm.
want to make a difference in the world, individuals, and, just loving and compassionate people. Great. That's the baseline. But the more that I interact with people with that label, I realize that that's not all that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am willing to allow them, each member of the community that I'm grateful to connect with, to show up how they're going to show up, and see me and not see me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's I can enjoy being in that community,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I betray myself by holding them to the baseline standard.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and I think that, yeah, I just realize the significance of my relationship has has I think it has far too much to do with if I even care if they see me or not. Even though I want to be seen, right? It's like I want to be seen, I
So
want
what
to be
does it
heard.
have to do with?
I I think it worthiness is coming in. I don't know why it is because I don't understand. I don't understand why worthiness, that that word, came up to to answer the question, because it was like when you asked me the question, I was like, well, I don't know. It's worthiness. It's like, well, that's not it. Let's try again, right? It's like, if I don't believe that I'm worthy, not yet worthy to be seen, I don't want you to see me,
Is it I haven't done enough,
right?
or what would make you worthy?
I think it is. I haven't done enough. I haven't proved to you that I'm a person that um, um, my humanity is um, available to you. That's just kind of weird. I don't know
Where
if
did that
that's
come
kind
from?
of,
I'm not saying
yeah,
it's weird, but it's interesting. Let's dive deeper. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of
right.
intuitively being channeled to you right now.
It's yeah. It's just really, you know. It feels like I'm looking to get to this. Hey, get beyond our labels, right?
Hmm.
But at the same time, um, saying that I am my labels, I'm not my labels. But in the time that I am my labels,
Hmm.
right? I am qualifying you, or I'm getting qualified for then you to get beyond my labels,
Hmm.
if that makes sense.
So you're not your labels, but you do need them for me to see you as worthy.
Right, right. Wow.
That might be a little bit
That's,
paradigm shifting.
yeah. I mean, because, um, yeah, it is. Um, I don't. Um, I almost said this is making me want to cry. It's
Hmm.
like, um, because it it hit a core of, I guess, of still trying to justify my worthiness, even in my freeing conversation. So I think that's why the conversation around labels is not the thing, but it's to get to the thing. And I think there is this, um, there's this getting to a place of people, um, human beings, um, connecting to their worthiness on a level that, causes them to just be, and like nothing else. It's just almost like it's like floating into a room, or or something. There's this image of just kind of just like, Sarah's here right now, or Bill's here, or, Williams, just kind of like just appeared, and it feels it for a moment there. It feel it feels like the labels conversation is playing this game
Mm.
to get people to really see and be themselves. Um, and geez, that got very vulnerable really quick. Like,
So,
wow. Uh,
what do you think the criterion are for people to just show up and be?
I I don't know. I think that's the thing, because I guess what first came to mind. So it's not true that I don't know. I just didn't share what the first thing that came to my mind. It's like I'm
Mm,
telling on myself. It's like, what is? It's like, who's running the show here? You know, who is? It's like, dude, we decided that we're not going to say this, and why are you still talking, right?
mm,
You know,
yeah.
but it is just to be. It's just be. You don't have to be aware of yourself. You don't have to acknowledge yourself. You just have to be. The
Hmm.
state of being just allows that, and I think the awareness and the acknowledgement, all of those things are in relationship to our labels.
Mm,
And it takes acknowledging and being aware of our labels to see where it's the difference, where I'm not that.
mhm.
So
I would add to that. I don't know if I cut you off. You were about to
no,
say something.
no, I was breathing. I was trying to take a breath. It's like, stop talking, just breathe.
Mm. I would add to what you're saying, that, and I'm willing to be wrong with this presumption, but I think in order for someone to be, there is a level that they need to feel safe.
Mm, yes,
And safe, the ego will determine how you show up to be safe,
right,
but to be in its most clean form
right,
is to be able to show up and be willing to be seen no matter what shows up.
right.
To know that you're safe enough to not dig into that place of shame that I cannot show up as the crying host
Right,
because I've lost control of
right,
who's running the show, as you put it a minute ago,
right.
or
Right.
where am I safe? I mean, this is the container that you built. And if you're not safe in your own container
Right.
because you might be judged, then we've built a container that's been entirely constructed by the labels that sit well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think they really acknowledging um, that safety is needed, right? Um, that it's definitely a part of being.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know why this is coming up for me right now, but part of my history is uh, being in the performing arts, and so I was
Mm-hmm.
an actor, and I um, did a lot of auditions and everything like that. And near the end, the auditions occurred to me as doing a job interview without any clothes on. That's
Mm-hmm.
how the audition like show. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's like it was like here I am, all my talents, all my flaws, all just kind of like there. And it's like, love me, accept me, take me, pick me. And it's just like, dude, I gotta get out of this. This is not healthy. This is not, this is, there is a level of vulnerability um, that I just didn't want.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and sometimes, the auditioner was like, you know, didn't even acknowledge you and just like next, right? And just kind of just move on. It's like, dude, you want to say hi? You want to say, want to say,
Mm-hmm.
great job, or you sucked or something. You just moved
Some
on, and
feedback.
right, and there's just I think there's a level of vulnerability for me that we might be ending sooner than we thought because of technology here. But the level of vulnerability um, that I share, sometimes it feels like it's connected to the feedback
Mm-hmm.
loop that I create.
Mm-hmm. Of how much you were seen or
Right,
acknowledged in that same moment.
right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's oftentimes I like to look at something from a perspective of looking at the opposite to see that almost everything in life is a spectrum. And none of us actually dance or sit on the far ends of the spectrum. They're just ideas mostly.
Mm,
And when we talk about how people see us, I think that there is a spectrum that is very selfish and self centered. And it's all about me, me, me. Look at me. I can do this. Acknowledge me. And there's another end of the spectrum, which is very humble and requires no acknowledgement. And how can I show up and be fully me and own my worthiness
mm,
and say I'm worth being seen without, this balancing act of I'm not the greatest,
right. Mm,
but I'm also giving my damnedest
right,
and really showing up. Please acknowledge me, at least for showing up, for holding
right,
space. Please see me. Please acknowledge me.
right.
And I thought a little bit more about another spectrum, and that was the spectrum that we started off with, the spaciousness that we talked about, and how we create space for vulnerability to show up
Mm,
by creating safety. And what is the opposite of spaciousness would be like very cramped. Like when you're, let's say, a lot of people in a small space, it's very difficult to stand out.
right.
Usually the person who makes the most noise or becomes the wildest
Mm,
cannon in the park is the one who gets the attention. Very rarely in a large group does the one in just that very controlled
mm,
masculine. I think it would probably be different in different societies, but in our current society, that is the
mm,
state. And then I was like, oh, besides being cramped, the opposite of spaciousness is also oppression.
mm,
And what part of a history of oppression has caused me, you, anyone else who's listening, to be less vulnerable?
mm. Yeah. There's so much there
Mm-hmm.
because of that oppression. For
Mm-hmm.
without even understanding why, to be honest, you don't under there's a part of my oppression as how it shows up for me, that I can rationalize and say, hey, it's all about economics, it's all about bad science, right? It's all about you know shabby religion, right? I can attribute those reasons, but at the same time, um, there's like that makes no damn sense. So there
Mm-hmm.
is no reason for me to be oppressed right now, but I am. So how? So so I cannot be vulnerable because it's not safe because this is irrational.
Irrational fears for our safety.
Right.
Yeah. And there are other ways that people are stepping into the spaciousness. Not all of it is with this humility and showing up and
Right.
I am claiming my space with my worthiness, but I also, there's a lot of really gregarious characters that are like, this is my space. I will claim my space, and just
Right.
very harsh and I will shout the loudest and you will listen to me and I am in control. And to me, I think the real challenge is stepping into that space and knowing that when and if we are safe
Mm.
to show up and just be.
Right. Right. And I think the more that we're able, the only way that we can really know um, if it's a safe space is to be present.
Mm-hmm.
You don't like stumble into a safe space, right? Or me for myself, right? There
Maybe you
is,
vibrate and attract.
I guess trying to use that. And yes, I think it calls a safe space calls, um, or invites you in. Um, and I had someone say to me, because as I was thanking them for creating a safe space, they're like, no, you need to thank yourself because um, you were a part of it. You basically um, what did he say? You validated it or something, like that. If I didn't say that the place was safe,
You wouldn't
I
have shown up that way.
right, and
Yeah.
so it was like, huh, okay, all right, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
that's a way, and so it's like in those moments where I acknowledge being vulnerable, it's
Mm-hmm.
because I have not just crossed my fingers and said, I hope this is a safe space. It's like that's why even as a kid, it's come to mind. It's like when somebody would come and it was mainly gossip, right? It's like hey, let me do this, but don't tell anybody. It's like, dude, if you honestly didn't think that that I wouldn't tell anybody, you wouldn't have to say that.
Mm-hmm.
So, type of things. And it is, I because like I said, with the information that you were getting and all that other kind of stuff, and then go from there. And I think when people have to say, "Hey, don't say this," or "Don't," or "Trust me here," it's like, "Uh oh," I mean, it's like even though that's not totally a part of our language, but that's a part of our language, and it's kind of and there could be some people to really mean that as it's being said, but sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it shows up totally differently than that.
For
Of
sure.
um, but um, but yeah, we co-sign to our safe spaces.
Mm-hmm. I think there's another important point to bring into this discussion, and it was something that you had said to me in the past that I don't want to know the magnitude of my influence
Mm,
because I might screw it up.
right.
And I think that there's something to be said about um, owning the magnitude of your influence, that
Mm,
you, me, anyone, that we can show up and be vulnerable and still be very powerful.
right.
And this idea of screwing it up. I think that we've all watched enough bloopers of politicians stuttering or
Misspeaks.
mispronouncing,
Right.
misspeaking things to get pretty wrapped up in the idea that we can screw things up really quickly.
Right.
And if that is the only soundbite that somebody would hear of us, they would be like, no.
Right.
Here again, not being seen.
Right.
And the fear of that allowing us to show up and feel safe, that in an age where everything, nearly everything, is either being recorded or documented in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
How do we feel safe enough to show up and be ourselves? How do we overcome this fear of having a soundbite of us screwing up, or even we were being really honest, but it just wasn't our best version of ourselves at that very
Right.
moment? How do we create that? Because people who don't know us don't extend us. Most people who don't know us won't extend a level of forgiveness, and they'll just be like, what an idiot. But there's a lot of people who will look at it and be like, the same way you and I are like, well, I would hate for that to be, my words to be misconstrued and to be seen in that way. That person is very human and they fallible just like either of us.
Right. Yeah. I believe, I currently believe, let's just say it that way, that if grace isn't extended, if the benefit of the doubt isn't extended, there was a bias, or there is a bias present in some at some um, label or something, some way that and so it really doesn't matter. I've written a post that says you can't have a coherent conversation with someone who you don't believe is coherent, right? I mean, so it is going into the conversation, you have already determined that this person is an idiot, or this person is, or
Yeah.
whatever the case may be. So trying to, get through a coherent conversation, it's impossible, in my opinion. And so,
Negotiating with a drunk.
right, we're negotiating with a drunk, right? And it's those type of things that we try to do, and so really my screwing up my influence is it's less about what other people think of my influence. It's more about how much I'm available to manage my influence, to control my influence, to manipulate my influence, and that desire to get it right. So it's like if you say, "Hey, William, the last time that you said this was perfect. I got it. I understood it. It was great. That will make you millions of dollars or anything like that." But but that honest present moment with you now turns into this manipulative money making statement, and I'm no longer present to give my presence and to make an influence on that situation from there. And and so I don't know if that's adding too much to that or anything like that, but that's a fear, that's a concern that I have, and I think our the recording is going to go out. And I was trying to figure out a better way to end the show than saying, "Hey, I think battery's going to end," and just kind of go from there. But that's a vulnerable moment, right?
For sure. Yeah.
but there. But I think this has been an incredible conversation, and I hope it doesn't end too before you get to say what you want to say to end the conversation. But thank you for it.
Sure. Thank you. Well, I think for me, vulnerability is being safe enough to be seen, to speak your truth, and to show up fully. And we have to create those spaces in our lives where that can exist. And I do believe that there's no bigger betrayal to our vulnerability than when your truth is used against you, when you've been vulnerable and that truth is used against you. So I would really invite people to really consider their own vulnerability right now and how they're showing up, how they're creating safe spaces for themselves and for others, and realizing that just by being that quiet, powerful presence, allowing people to be seen and to be vulnerable in front of you is one of the greatest gifts that you can give someone. And your influence, you never know how far reaching it may be. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to come and to listen through this conversation and to sit with us and hold us in vulnerability, in our humanness, in our fallibility, and in our desire to show up and make a difference in your lives. So we thank you for spending time with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Blessings, my friend.
Blessings. Thanks so much.